Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Catalyst. My name is JR. I'm the teaching pastor here. And apparently, this is the sixth day of Christmas, so Merry Sixth Day of Christmas. We're barely halfway through celebrating. And for some reason, we chose this year to observe one of my least favorite Christmas traditions here at Catalyst, which is our front screen choosing not to work today. I don't know why it happens this time every other year or so, but it is. So don't worry, we're singing mostly Christmas songs today, so they're hopefully songs that you'll be pretty familiar with. But if you want to Google the lyrics or something like that, you can, or you can just sing the words you know and the words you don't know, and that's fine. Whatever you want to do is great. So I want to ask you this morning a question as we're getting going. What is the best gift that you've ever received? Okay, just think about that. What is the best gift you've ever received? Jesus is not the right answer. So mine was an email. Okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit of context to explain that. So I'm a big nerd. I love fantasy and science fiction, and I actually love them because of another Christmas gift. My cousin got me a fantasy series of books when I was in 7th grade. It was the first time I'd ever read anything like that. I hadn't even really read like Lord of the Rings or Chronicles of Narnia or any of that. And I read these books, and I was amazed. I didn't know literature like this existed, and so I became hooked. I started reading everything I could. And I found this another series as I started just reading called The Chronicles of Thomas Covenant. It's by this author named Stephen R. Donaldson. And not everyone loves these books, but I did. They were those books that just like, I don't know if you've ever read one of those books that like reaches into your soul and just grabs a hold of you, and it messes you up in a good way. Those were these books for me. I just couldn't get enough of them. I read them. I've read the whole. There's 10 books in the series. I've probably read them all like 5 or 6 times. And the author, this is a person that really gave me language to think through my own experiences. He helped me know myself better by reading his words, right? It's really hard for me to put into words how important and influential he was on my life. So in 2013, he published the final book in this big series. And I was so excited for it to come out. And a couple years before that, I had started a podcast with a couple of my friends where we would bring on authors and interview them, right? And so it's my birthday. It's not Christmas. I thought about lying and changing the story so that it was a Christmas present, but I wanted to be honest and transparent with you. So it was my birthday, not Christmas. And it's in the morning. My wife Amanda and I are just sitting in the living room drinking coffee and kind of talking through our day. And all of a sudden her phone dings like with a little notification, and her eyes light up, and she says, look at this email. And she had emailed this author's publicist and explained that I had a podcast where we interviewed authors and asked whether he would be willing to come on and let us interview him about this book series. And this email was the confirmation from the publicist that said he would love to be on your podcast. And so I died immediately, right, just right there, and picked myself up off the floor. And then it was a huge deal for me. I geeked out, and I spent like days and days and days reading everything he had every interview he had ever given, and trying to think of the best, most perfect, all that. But I said that was the best gift I've ever received because it was such a deeply personal gift. I imagine that if everyone in this room got that same gift, I would be the only one that was that excited about it, right? Most of the rest of you would be like, he was nice. Right? But for me, like that specific gift made me feel so known and so seen. And it wasn't something that, it wasn't something that was really expensive. It didn't take a huge investment of time, but it was something that was so perfectly personal to me. It was transformative for me. It was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing to receive from someone that loved me and knew me so well. And that gift in that moment communicated to me so much love, so much affection, and so much knowledge of me. That's why I say it was my favorite gift I've ever received. So we're going to talk about gift giving today. More importantly, we're going to talk about gift receiving today because I want us to really think about how we learn to receive well, how we learn to see everything in our life as gifts from God, and how when we do that, when we truly receive, how that transforms us and how that makes us into a people who become good news because of how we share with other people. So we're going to sing some Christmas songs to celebrate giving, to celebrate the gift of Jesus into our lives. Will you stand and sing along with us?
Good morning, Catalyst. Oh, you guys still full of Christmas ham? What's going on? Good morning, everybody. All right, my name is Shakita. I'm the worship director here at Catalyst, and I'll invite you guys to just sing along with us these familiar songs as we continue to celebrate Christmas and the birth of Christ. stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. The thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder praise a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees. Oh, hear the angel voices. Oh, night divine. Oh, night when Christ was born. Oh, night divine. Oh, night divine. Truly he taught us to love one another. His law is love, and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease. Sweet hymns of joy in grateful chorus raise, we let all within us praise his holy name. Christ is the Lord. Oh, praise his name forever. His power and glory evermore proclaim. His power and glory evermore proclaim. Fall on your knees. Oh, hear the angel voices. Oh, night divine. Oh, night when Christ was born. Oh, night divine. Oh, night divine. God, we thank you for sending your son. We thank you for the season that we celebrate the birth of Jesus come to the earth. We thank you for this precious gift. We thank you for everyone that's assembled here. We pray that you would continue to be with us throughout the service, that you would speak through JR, and that we receive your word with thankful hearts. In Jesus' name, amen.
And you can have a seat, everyone. As we are continuing to worship, I want to take a moment just to call your attention to a couple of quick announcements. First of all, this is the last Sunday that we're doing what was our Advent giving project. It's now Christmas time, but we're still going to use this Sunday to promote that. So if you haven't been with us for the last few Sundays, we have been collecting money to buy Buffalo bicycles to send to pastors who live in Malawi, which is a country in Africa. And the pastors over there, they're part of our denomination, so they said that one thing that would really help them be able to connect and serve their community would be if they had what are called Buffalo bicycles, which are bicycles that are specifically designed to be good for use in the developing world. And so they're very easy to maintain. They have some special equipment outfitted on them to help with transportation. And so by being equipped with these bicycles, it will enable these pastors to be able to serve their local communities. One of the biggest ways that they'll be able to serve is they'll be able to do a lot of the work for the homes in the community that often falls on to the children to do, things like carrying water and getting food and things like that. And because the kids have to do those things in their homes, they're often unable to finish schooling. And so that obviously puts them at a disadvantage moving forward and growing up. And so these pastors, by receiving these bicycles and by using them in their communities, one of the big things they're going to be able to do is enable these kids to finish their educations, which is a long-term investment in the good of that whole country. And so each bike is $150. We originally set a goal of 6 bicycles, and as of today, we've raised enough money to buy 15. So that's awesome. Thank you all so much for your generosity. And again, we're going to be going ahead and receiving monies for that through the end of the year, which is tomorrow. So if you haven't given yet, then you're welcome to give to that. You can put money in the box by the door on the way out. If you designate it to the bicycles, it'll go there. If you use our giving app that we have here at Catalyst, there's a specific place in there where you can designate money to go to the bicycles. And we're asking everyone that this is above and beyond your regular giving. That you're not diverting normal giving funds into this, but this is something you go above and beyond because it's Christmas time, and we want to give to that. Also, again, this is just a note from Uncle Sam. Any giving that you want counted towards this year's giving, so you can deduct it on your taxes, we have to receive that by tomorrow. So again, you can put it in the box by the door on your way out or use the app, either way. But if you want it to count towards this year's giving, we need to have it by tomorrow. So that's just a little friendly note from the IRS for you. So I think that's all the announcements. I left my mini somewhere in the chaos of this morning. So if you have one, though, we're going to do the tear-off now. There's a spot on that tear-off for prayer requests. If there's something that is going on in your life that we could join you in prayer for, we would love to do that. Just write your prayer request down in there. Oh, thanks, buddy. And you can drop it in the box by the door on your way out. And we'll send that out. We have a bunch of people who will receive that via email who will pray for you. If you want prayer, but you don't want it sent out to everyone, and you mark the box that says this is confidential, then only our pastoral team will see that, and our pastors can pray with you. Okay, so you get this ready. I'm going to count to 10, and we're going to tear it off together. Here we go. 1. I'm not going to count to 10. I'm going to count to 3. Sorry, I don't know. I'm all over the place. This projector thing is all in my head. I am so sorry. Here we go. Okay, 1, 2, 10. All right, very good. And kids, that's your signal to head back to the lab. Thank you so much for being in here with us and for singing with us. We will see you afterwards. They're going to go back and learn about giving and receiving gifts in language that's right at their level. Same thing we do for us in here. So thank you, kids. Thank you, Vanessa, and all of your volunteers. We're so grateful for you. And as they're leaving, I want to invite you to pass peace with me. This is something we do every week here at Catalyst because we know that peace comes into the world from God. But we know that it comes through us, that God appoints us as peacemakers and sends us into the world. So each week we greet each other, we offer each other peace. It's a way of remembering that when we leave from here, we're being sent out as God's ambassadors to make the world a more peace-filled place than it was before. So would you stand as we continue to worship, greet some people around you, and offer them peace in the name of Jesus. Our Advent series was called Raise Your Voice, and we spent those 4 weeks leading up to Christmas asking the question, what does it mean that God has called us and placed us in this world? As we wait for Advent this year, a lot of years at Catalyst during Advent, we would focus on how do we wait well, and what does it look like for us to wait, and we would focus on things like hope and expectation and joy. This year, we focus on the proclamation side of Advent, the fact that when God's people were waiting for the Messiah to come, God consistently sent to them prophets who would announce to them things like, wait well, be confident, be hopeful, be joyful. And so we asked the question this year, well, what does it look like for us to be appointed by God, to be proclaimers of this good news, that the world belongs to God, that God has not abandoned the world, and that God will return to bring justice and peace in the world. And we spent 4 weeks asking what it means for us to be a part of that. And so today, I wanted to finish this series by doing something a little bit different, by looking at how we can embody our good news, not just by speaking it, but by living it out. And so during our series, we both looked at the prophets in the Old Testament who were those proclaimers, and then we also looked at the story of Mary, the mother of Jesus, and how she prepared to welcome Jesus into the world. So today, we're going to go back and look at one of Mary's heroes. One of the people that really inspired Mary and helped her understand what it meant that she was carrying the Christ child. It's a woman named Hannah, and her story is in 1 Samuel chapter 2. So if you have a Bible, you can go ahead and turn to 1 Samuel chapter 2. If you grabbed one of the free Bibles out of the back, that's on page 164. If you don't own a Bible, please keep that one. We would love for you to consider that a gift from Catalyst. And as you're turning there or you're clicking there or whatever, I'm going to give you a bunch of the backstory from 1 Samuel chapter 1. Because we're going to be doing the end of Hannah's story, and I really want you to catch all of it. So Hannah lived in a little village in Ramah, called Ramah. It's in northern Israel. And she lived, if you're familiar at all with the timeline of the Bible, she lived at the end of the period of the book of Judges, which was a really bad time in Israel's history. It was filled with war and with oppression and all kinds of stuff. And this was the world that Hannah lived in. She was married to a man named Elkanah, and he had 2 wives. Okay, and Hannah was unable to have children. The other wife had all kinds of children. Okay, so you can imagine how Hannah felt. She was the favored wife. Right? Her husband liked her better, but the other woman was producing children, producing heirs. And so Hannah really struggled. She really wanted a child, and she didn't know why she didn't have a child. They lived about 15 miles, maybe a little more, from Shiloh, a larger city, and Shiloh had a tabernacle or a temple for God. So whenever people wanted to worship, they would have to go to Shiloh to worship. And so once a year, Elkanah and his family, including Hannah, would go to the temple at Shiloh, and they would worship there. Now, Shiloh was a terrible place. Okay, again, the whole of Israel in the time of the Judges was a pretty terrible place. But this temple at Shiloh was run by a priest named Eli, and he himself wasn't a bad guy, but he was he was also not a good guy, right? He was lazy. He didn't stand up for what was right. He was one of those people that was like, well, as long as I'm not actively doing anything bad, I'm not a bad guy. But because he was a leader, because he was a priest, he was letting all kinds of terrible things happen, including at the temple. His 2 sons, who were grown, who were also priests, were actually abusive. All of the stuff you hear today about church leaders and all the bad things that they do, these guys, we didn't invent that, right? These guys were doing all of that exact same kind of stuff. All kinds of abuse, all kinds of injustice at the temple, where people had to come to try to encounter God. There was this web of darkness that was over it, because of Eli's 2 sons. And again, Eli was like, well, I'm not doing anything. Boys will be boys, right? Like that. That was his attitude. And so Hannah comes to this place, to the temple at Shiloh. And in 1 Samuel chapter 1, she prays. She asks God for a child. Now, I want you to try to put yourself in Hannah's position. What would it even take to pray at a place like Shiloh? With such abusive, terrible priests. If you were asked to point at a nexus of injustice and oppression, and people would point to Shiloh, what would it take for you to go there and to pray there, seeing everything that's going on? I think for Hannah to pray there took a tremendous amount of hope. It took a tremendous amount of courage. It took a tremendous insistence in her own spirit that the way God's temple was being run was not reflective of who God is. And she did. She had that courage. She had that hope. So she prayed there. She prayed for a child. And God answered her. God gave her a child, a son that she named Samuel. And then, after he was weaned, so, he's probably, in those days, 5 or 6 years old, on one of those annual trips back to Shiloh from Ramah, she gave Samuel over to Eli to be raised in the temple. She dedicated him to God and gave him there to become a priest. Not exactly a place that's good for a kid, right? Not exactly a place with a lot of positive role models. How could she do that? Well, when Hannah prayed, she was praying for her womb, but she was also praying for the world. She looked around her and she saw a place that was barren, that was lifeless, that was devoid of hope, that was just injustice and oppression, even from the people that were supposed to be doing the right thing, the people who were supposed to be leading the nation in justice and in righteousness. Even they, maybe especially they, were corrupt. And yet, God heard her prayer. Even in the midst of that darkness, even in the midst of that oppression, God heard Hannah's prayer and brought life where there was no life. So for Hannah, Samuel became a symbol that God hears prayers, a symbol that God is not finished with the world, a symbol that God is willing to work in the midst of darkness where most people can't even find a way to hope. God is there and God is at work. And Samuel, her son, was proof of that. Proof that you can pray in a place like Shiloh and God still hears you. And God still moves. If God will hear you in Shiloh, God will hear you anywhere. And so she gives Samuel to the priest as like this holy antidote. He was like a holy virus that was going to upset and overturn the evil order that had taken root. But still she had to leave him there. And what she did, if you go back to the beginning of 1 Samuel chapter 2, you see that when Hannah leaves him, when she drops him off at Shiloh for the first time, she sings this song. And it's all about what Samuel represents. It's all about the fact that because God has given her Samuel, and because she's now giving Samuel over to the temple, the powerful are going to be pulled down, and the oppressed are going to be lifted up. It's this amazing song. And it's actually the song that when Mary sings the Magnificat, if you were here a couple weeks ago when we looked at Mary's song, it's the song that she modeled she remixed it. It's the same song. So that's why I was saying that Mary looks to Hannah as an inspiration, right? When she's trying to understand what happened with Jesus and her, she looks back to what happened with Samuel and Hannah. Right? Does that make sense? So back to Hannah. All of this is true. Samuel is a good gift from God. Samuel is proof that there's life, that there's hope, that things are going to change, that God is on the move. And yet she still has to leave her son in Shiloh. She still has to give him over to Eli and his terrible, evil sons. And she still has to make the journey back to Ramah without him. So that's where I want to pick up the story. We're going to read just a few verses here, and I want you to look at how Samuel is cared for by his mother, even at a distance. Okay, so we're going to be in verse 18. We're going to read verses 18, 19, and 20, and then just hop down to verse 26. Samuel was ministering before the Lord, a boy wearing a linen ephod, so he's being trained to be a priest. And each year his mother made a small robe, a little coat for him, and she brought it to him when she came with her husband for the sacrifice. Before they returned home, Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife, and he would say, "May the Lord give you other children to take the place of this one she gave to the Lord." And then they would go home. And then down in verse 26 it says, "Meanwhile the boy Samuel grew taller and grew in favor with the Lord and with the people." So Hannah can't be with her son. She gets to see him again, probably once a year. Maybe a little more often, right? They're going to take it's like if you have parents that live like 5 or 6 or 10 hours away, right? Like you see him a couple times a year, but you're not in their life. And so Hannah makes Samuel a coat, a little robe, every year. All year long, she's thinking about him, imagining how he's growing and making this robe, fashioning it for him. And then when she gets there and she gets to see him, she hugs him tight, and she doesn't want to let go. But of course, the time comes when she has to let go, and she has to leave him in Shiloh yet again. And so she puts this coat on him, this little robe on him, and it's going to get him through the next year. And then she leaves, and she goes home again. She can't hold on to him. And so she gives him this robe, this coat. It's like an extended hug, right? Something that he can just wear and keep with him. And then for Samuel, no matter how dark his circumstances are, no matter how bad things get at Shiloh, no matter how impossible the task that is before him seems, to become a priest, to work in this place of darkness, to bring light. No matter how impossible that seems, he knows that he's loved. He knows that God is with him because he knows his mother is with him. Because he's wearing that physical symbol of her love. And I imagine if he grows the way kids do, right? At the beginning of the year, it fits pretty well. By the end of the year, it's getting a little tight. But he's holding on to it. He doesn't want to take it off. He wants to keep it with him. And he knows, as the year is drawing to a close, he's going to get a new coat, another coat, a reminder that he is loved. Friends, this is the power of the gift. The gift reminds us in a tangible way that we are loved by another person. It's something that we can carry with us, hold with us, keep with us, even in the darkest times. For a long time, Christians have practiced gratitude. And that may sound funny that we have to practice gratitude. But we do. Because too often we choose to look at what we have in our life as things that we've earned or things that we're entitled to. And we start to take them for granted. We start to take people for granted. And so when we practice gratitude, what we're doing with the practicing of the gratitude is we are practicing acknowledging that what we have in our life is a gift from God. That the air that we breathe is something that we receive as a gift. That the relationships that we step into, we receive as gifts. That the work that we're able to do, we receive as a privilege to be able to do the work. A gift from our Creator. And when we really get serious about practicing gratitude, you find that there's almost nothing that you can look at in your life that you cannot receive as a gift, instead of insisting on it as a right or something that we've earned or something like that. And so when we practice gratitude, we get better and better at seeing the things in our life as tangible expressions of God's love for us, as these flashes of light in darkness, as these symbols of hope against injustice. And when we do that, when we receive gratefully, it turns us around as people. And we begin to look out at the world and we begin to see that we too have something to share. We too can become generous. If you go on and read the story of Samuel, friends, it is just an unbelievable story. He is responsible for finding King David, born in Bethlehem. If you were here the week before Christmas when we talked about that little village, that little nowhere place. He found King David and anointed him as God's chosen king and shepherded David through the beginning of his rule. Samuel is the one that is responsible for establishing the line that Jesus would come from. He became an amazing leader of Israel, and under his leadership, Israel began to push back that darkness that they had allowed to encroach. And we can trace all of that back to his mother and her fearless generosity and her insistence on giving that gift, that little coat. So I want to ask you this morning, to spend some time in this back part of our gathering, to reflect on what are the things in your life that you have received. I mean, I'm assuming most of us have been receiving at least a few things in the last week, right? Because it's Christmas time. And so we've probably been especially receiving some stuff from friends, from family, from loved ones, right? And so this is a good time to practice receiving and practice gratitude. But especially because this is the last Sunday of our year and we're looking towards 2019, I also want us to spend some time thinking about what you have in your life. I mean, I can't imagine Hannah sitting at her home knowing that her boy was gone and wondering what she could do. She had so little power, so little position as a woman in that culture, so little that she could do to fight against the darkness in her world. But she could make a coat. And so she did. She did what she could. And God used that to do amazing things. So what about you? What are the things that you can do? What are the ways that God has gifted you? And how can you give those to the world? How can you do even small things with great love? How can you be a part of pushing back the darkness in our world, of working for justice and equity for all? Maybe it is going to be something big like Samuel. Or maybe it's going to be something small like making a coat like Hannah. I want to invite you to the table this morning because we cannot be good givers until we're good receivers. And so we come to the communion table to receive this gift. And you know, some of you laugh at me for how particular I am about language, but one of the things, I grew up taking communion, and as I began to understand the meal better, I changed how I talked about it. I don't take communion. We don't take communion. We receive communion. Because this is a gift that God gives us. It's not something that we're entitled to. It's not something that we earn. It's grace. It's a gift that we get to receive. When we receive communion, we are participating in the meal that Jesus shared with his disciples the night before he was killed. When at that meal he broke bread and passed it to his disciples, and he said, "This is my body, it's broken for you. Take it and eat it." Later in that meal, he passed a cup of wine, and he said, "This is my blood, it's poured out for the forgiveness of sin. Take it and drink it." When we receive communion together, we remember that everything we have is a good gift from God. That we are able to live and move, and we have our very being because God is our Creator and our Lord. And so we receive a meal from God so that we can be sent back out into the world to give, to share a little of what God has given us. And you don't have to be a member of Catalyst to receive communion with us today. If you're someone who's willing to receive from God, to receive open-handed, then you're welcome to come to the table today. I'm going to lead you in a prayer exercise, prayer of examine. I'm going to ask you some questions that you can reflect prayerfully on, and they're designed to just kind of help you walk through this idea of gratitude. Are you a good receiver? If not, how can you do better? If you are, then what does that mean for you, right? And then I'm going to ask you to think about the week that's ahead of us, and because the week is turning into a new year ahead of us, be thinking about, the year ahead of us. How is God calling you to give in the next year? To whom is God calling you to give in the next year, right? So you don't have to bow your head and close your eyes. You can, whatever prayer posture is comfortable for you. But here's the first question I want you to consider prayerfully. Think about your life, the content of your life. What in your life can you receive as a good gift from God? What is something that you can look at in your life and you say, you know what? I choose to receive this as a gift. Is that a relationship? Is that something that you have? Is that an ability that you have? What is it? Now, what in your life can you view as a means that God has given you to bless the world around you? Maybe you make coats like Hannah. But what is a means that you have that you can say, you know what, God has given me this ability or this means so that I can bless the world around me? Now think about the week that's ahead of you, the year that's ahead of us. What does it look like for you to practice gratitude in this next week or in this next year? How can you be a good receiver? And finally, how can you be generous towards others in this next week or in this next year? What are some practical, tangible ways that you can express generosity? All right, let's pray together. God, thank you for this beautiful story we have heard this morning of your daughter Hannah. For the courage that she exhibited. For the way that her courageous generosity transformed your people, transformed the world. Thank you for a story that was so powerful that even Mary, the mother of Jesus, looked back to Hannah as an inspiration, as a source of hope. May we too this morning look at her and see a reflection of ourselves. See how we too have been blessed. To see how you have given to us, that we might also be a generous people. We approach your table this morning as a people grateful to receive your sacrifice. We ask as we come that these wafers and juice would be a spiritual food for us, that we would remember yet again the goodness of your grace and your mercy. Send us from this place as a generous people. Open our eyes to the truth that any gift, no matter how small, when it's given in love, has the potential to change the world, not because of the gift itself or because of the giver, but because of your grace at work in us. We offer these prayers when we approach your table this morning in the name of your Son, Jesus.
do this last worship song. Everybody could just stand and sing with us. So for Christmas Eve, we sang "Oh Come All You Faithful," but we sang it a cappella, and it's not something we normally do, is a cappella songs. But there's some songs and some seasons and some things that just call for us to raise our voices, and just to raise our voices to be heard and to sing loudly. And so this is just one of those songs I feel like when we sing it with no music, we can really hear each other. We can really it resonates with everybody. So we're going to sing "Oh Come All Ye Faithful," and we're going to sing without any music. We're just going to sing it out, and you guys belt it and just go for it. If you can sing a part, sing a part. If you can't, whatever. If you sing off key, who cares? Just let it loose. All right. Oh, come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Oh, come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Sing, choirs of angels, sing in exaltation. Sing, all ye citizens of heaven above. Glory to God, all glory in the highest. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Yea, Lord, we greet thee, born this happy morning. Jesus, to thee be all glory given. Word of the Father, now in flesh appearing. Oh, come, let us adore. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord.
A couple of things before you go. First of all, thank you, as always, to all of you here at Catalyst who are regularly supporting us through your giving and through your serving. Thank you for making what we do possible. Again, if you're a guest with us and you're looking to get connected with a new church in the new year, we would love to help you do that. We have an experience we created specifically for you called the Newcomers Lunch that we do once a month. And so the next one is January 13th, and it's right after this. So you just come like you did today, stick around, we clear out some chairs and set up some tables and feed you. And in about 45 minutes, we tell you who Catalyst is and we tell you what God is doing here. And then we give you some next steps to get connected to the congregation. So if you're interested in that, the box at the top of the tear-off that we did is a place for you to sign up for that. Just give us some info so we can get an RSVP. You're going to drop it in the box by the door on your way out, or you can come give it to me. Either way is great. But again, if you're not ready for that, that's cool too. We're glad that you were with us this morning and hope you felt really welcomed here at Catalyst. Next week is the Sunday of Epiphany, which is when we celebrate the three wise men coming to Jesus, except there weren't three of them, there weren't wise men. And we're going to talk about all that next week. It's going to be super fun. But it's kicking off our first series of the new year called Good News for a Change, where we're going to talk about how to talk to anyone about Jesus. So it's going to be a really fun series. I think you're going to enjoy a lot of the stuff we have coming. And that starts next Sunday on January 6th. So go ahead and get the hype train started for that. You're gonna love it. Now, as you're going this week, again, I just want to send you with that image of Hannah making that coat for her son, knowing where he is, knowing what it means that he's there, and knowing that this is what she can do to provide for him, to let him know that he's loved. All of us have something that we can share with the world around us, and it may be small, but that doesn't mean it's not important. It doesn't mean that God doesn't want to use that to bring beauty and truth and hope and life into someone else's world. And so as you go today, go knowing that God has given you much, which means that you can give much. And when you do, you transform the world around you. You get to participate in what God is doing to rescue our world, to end injustice, and to bring hope and life to everyone. Go in the grace and peace of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Merry Christmas. We'll see you next week, next year, all that.
Come to God's led.
All righty.
Oh, well, now then how the reindeers loved him as they shouted out with glee. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, you go down in history.